Hello and welcome to your second and final lesson in the systems unit. Last class we solved the systems by graphing. In this unit or this lesson we're going to do it algebraically. So you know last year from grade 10 math the two methods are substitution and elimination. So I don't have to give you notes about how to solve because we learned those two methods last year in grade 10. And like I said, we learned last lesson, sometimes it's linear or linear quadratic or quadratic this year. And then you could have 1, 2, 0, or infinite solutions. So we're going to solve them. We're going to, first few examples are the exact same ones we did last lesson. So we already solved them graphically, so we know what the answers are. So I just thought those would be good examples to use to solve them algebraically and make sure that the answers we get this method match the ones we got last method. So on the handout that you'll get, if I say which method to use, then you do have to use that method. If I don't indicate a method, then it's up to you. So in your notes, the first one, it says, here's our system. It's a linear quadratic. We're going to solve by substitution. We already solved it by graphing, so we know the solution, but let's do substitution. So like I said, you know the steps from last year, grade 10 math, so you were supposed to review your notes before today's lesson. So you know to do substitution, you have to isolate one variable, and then you just substitute that variable into the other. So this is easy. Right now, both of them already have y isolated. So I'm going to replace the y here with here. We can't have more than one variable in the equation at a time. So we have to have either all x's or all y's when we solve. So you can't have some x's, some y's. So I'm just going to replace the y here with this y there. We're going to substitute this into the other one. So we did learn that method last year. And that's it. The rest of it is solving quadratic equations, which we did in the month of February. So we're going to collect like terms. So if you do it correctly, I cleaned it up. I'm skipping some steps along the way. So if you do the math correctly, your quadratic equation is x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Don't forget the equals 0 on your rational test. Some of you were still taking E2s because you're dropping that. You have to have that. And then to factor plus 5 plus 2, still need the equal 0. So when you solve, we have two x values. It could be minus 5 or it could be minus 2. Okay, now we're not done the question because remember, to solve, you need to have the x and y coordinates. So we know that we're going to have two solutions for this linear quadratic system. On the next page, I've started it a bit. It either could be minus 2 or minus 5. So again, when you go back, which equation do you use to solve? We had two of them. You can use either one, right? Now that we know our x values, you solve for the corresponding y. You can use the first or the second. Choose whichever one you think is easiest. I thought the first one is easier, but if you like squaring, and go ahead. Either one would lead you to the same answers. Choose whichever one you think is the easiest. Okay, so when we substitute it in, minus 2, that gives you a value of 1. So this means when x is minus 2, the y value is 1. So that's 1 point, that's an intersection point. And then the other one, minus 5 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So the other coordinate point is minus 5, 4. So we have two solutions. And the two solutions are minus 2, 1 and minus 5, 4. And if you check your last lesson when we graphed it, yeah, that's exactly where the intersection points were between that parabola and the line. So we got the same answer whether we used substitution or graphing. Okay, let's try elimination. Again, I'm not giving you the notes how to do elimination because we did that last year. You were supposed to reread your grade 10 notes about how we do elimination. Remember that you're either going to be adding or subtracting the equations to eliminate one of the variables, the x or the y, because we can't be solving for both at the same time. So I just rewrote the question here. Now at this point, remember if they're the same sign, you subtract, or if the opposite sign, you can add. Now, do we get rid of the x's or the y's? Well, it's going to be easier to get rid of the x's. So we're going to add these two equations. Y plus y is 2y. Minus x squared plus x squared, they cancel out. And then basically 0 minus 18 is minus 18. You should only have one variable. If you still have some x's and some y's, you've done something wrong. You can only have x's or only have y's at this point. And now the rest, when you solve, this would give us negative 9. So we've solved for y, but now we need to go back and solve for the corresponding x values. Well, which equation do we use? Do we use the first or the second? It doesn't matter, whichever one you think is easier. I thought the first one was easier, but if you don't like negatives, you could have used the second one. It doesn't matter, it should lead to the same answer. So once we know our y value, we just have to solve for the corresponding x, choosing whichever equation you think is easiest. So when y is negative 9, what's the x value? We divide both sides by negative 1. So we're going to have two answers here, plus or minus 3. So if x is positive 3, our y value is negative 9. But if it's negative 3, you get the same thing. So there's two solutions. Oh, my pen's not working. The two solution points is 3, negative 9, negative 3, negative 9. We solved that by graphing. So go back and look at the graph from last notes, and yeah, those are the 2 points where those two parabolas intersected. Now, I'm going to try one more that we didn't do last time. This is a little bit of a tough one, so they get a little bit long and tedious, but nothing too hard. Like I said, it's all the concepts we know. So 3x squared minus x minus y minus 2 equals 0. 6x squared plus 4x minus y minus 4 equals 0. I just rewrote the question here. Now, I'm going to get rid of my y variables, but they're the same sign. So remember from grade 10, same sign, subtract. They're the opposite sign you add, same sign, subtract. So for proper notation, we show that we are subtracting. 3x squared minus 6x squared gives us negative 3x squared. Minus x minus 4x gives us a negative 5x. Minus y minus minus y, they should cancel each other out. And then minus 2 minus minus 4 gives us a plus 2 equals 0. Okay, you can factor this. I don't like factoring when my a value is negative, so I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. You don't have to, but I just don't really like factoring with negative a's. And at this point, we're experts at factoring trinomials where a is not 1. We've been doing that, since grade 10. Like I said, you're going to learn factoring by force. Even if you don't like it, you can't avoid factoring. So it'll be minus 1, not by force, you know what I mean. By practice and routine, you will have to learn factoring. You can't avoid it in pre-cal, grade 11 or 12. So that's our factored form. And then when we solve, we have two values, 1/3 and minus 2. Okay, are we done? No, that's the x value. We have to solve for the corresponding y. Oh my gosh, which equation do I use? The first or the second? Whichever one's easier. Well, neither looks easy. Yeah, I know, so pick one. I chose the first one, I think, on the next screen. But if you thought the second one was easier, that's fine. So again, I think I already did the work. I already factored it. So what I did is I chose the first equation. And again, I know that there's two options for x. It can be 1/3 or minus 2. Now I have to solve for the corresponding y. So I took the first equation and I added the y to each side because I needed to isolate y. I just thought it was easier. So remember, I know the x, I'm solving for the corresponding y. So I just rearranged it. Y is equal to 3x squared minus x minus 2. And then I have to test it twice. Try it once when the x values are 1/3 and try it again when the x values are negative 2. I'm going to save you some time. But if you test through, when x is 1/3, you should end up getting a y value of negative 2. So that means when x is 1/3, your y value is negative 2. When here, if you run it through, and hopefully my math is correct, when x is minus 2, I get a y value of 12. So that point, when x is minus 2, y is 12. So again, we have two solutions. If we were to graph these two parabolas, there's two spots where they overlap, where they intersect at the coordinates 1/3 minus 2 and minus 2, 12. Okay, so the algebra gets a little bit fun, but like I said, the concept's exactly grade 10 from last year. So today we're practicing solving by elimination and substitution. And that's it. This is our second and final lesson of this system unit. Then you'll have a hands-in to practice the algebra, the substitution, elimination, graphing method, and that's it. So have fun in this nice short unit.